Hey everyone, welcome to another week of ProMAX Tech Talks. I'm Matt in the living room laboratory, and I have my tech team here. We also have Skip from Backblaze joining us this week, and we're going to be talking about cloud integrations and how all that works. Skip, do you mind introducing yourself to our viewers?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt, and hello, ProMAX Tech Team. It's an honor to be included. And as Matt said, I'm Skip Levens. I drive product marketing for media and entertainment at Backblaze. That does not only personal computer backups for $6 a month, but has opened up that whole backend infrastructure as massively available object storage at only $5 a terabyte. That's
our favorite cloud vendor. Don't tell the other.
Well, thank you for
awesome.
that. That's high praise.
Well, you guys kind of get that, like, media professionals have hundreds of terabytes, not like 5 gigs.
And, they really do.
That's important to understand.
Yeah.
All right, well, that perfectly leads us into our first question. So how are video professionals currently using cloud storage?
It's, so I got to say, it's all over the map. So by the way, I've known each of you in ProMAX for a very long time, and I know your expertise in hardware storage and building solutions for customers. And I know you guys address pretty much the whole market. And Backblaze fits into those different levels of solutions in different ways. For almost everyone out there, all the producers / editors that you see them juggling hard drives back and forth, and they need to copy things back and forth. So the light bulb is going on, and they're realizing, when I open up my cabinet, I've got 60 or 70 hard drives. And I say to myself, gosh, I could never afford, RAID storage, but they already paid for several many times over, sitting in their closet. So and then the worst part is when they have 60 or 70 drives in there, they think, oh, well, I think it's on this drive. And like 7 years later, they pull it out and expect the files to be there. And how long is the hard drive warranty? 3 years. If you're lucky, 5 if it's a pro level drive. So a lot of these customers are realizing that they better quickly copy the content off of those hard drives into cloud. But then the whole nether level of customers realize that having cloud storage, so could be the perfect active archive for everything in their environment, everything in their shop. So obviously they want the fastest shared storage for their whole team, but it really pays to have a copy of all of that content, all their back projects, in something that's active like the cloud that they can immediately yank back if something happens.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, with video teams, we're pretty rare in that we're still the crazy performance hogs of the world. And that's few and far between anymore. Having, we all kind of know, especially now, because everybody's been trying to figure out, like, how the hell do I work from home? And you can't just throw R3D files on cloud storage and throw them on a timeline and just pretend that the world's going to work. It's just not.
Right.
And, we'll get there eventually, like Skip, I have no doubt, a few years, maybe 5 years from now, people will be editing off of Backblaze directly from their homes. I have no doubt we'll get there. But right now, I've seen a lot of video teams using the local storage for that high performance, whether it's shared storage like what we have, or a local Thunderbolt RAID, or even just a single USB drive.
Right.
And then what I've seen which is really cool, is them using the cloud as a real-time backup, a real-time mirror of their actually active projects. So there's like the backup aspect, and then there's that long-term archive. And those are the two ways that I've seen most video professionals leveraging at least pools of cloud storage, cloud storage like what you guys offer.
Right.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit more too. Like since I do a lot of the trainings with ProMAX, with all the different companies that we work with, what I typically see is, to Nathaniel's point a moment ago, where the cloud stuff really becomes exciting for a lot of smaller companies is it's a very cheap, very accessible off-site backup that they don't have to manage themselves. And you get into like the large amounts of data, the footage, stuff like that. There's internal backup processes for that stuff. And during an active project, typically you're going to manage that locally because just the size and the speed at which it needs to be dealt with, right?
Right.
But when you can set up an active backup where you're sending, your dailies up, your smaller stuff up, on a sometimes an hourly basis. Like, are you sending up like the versions of the project files and stuff? That's an amazingly effective disaster recovery kind of situation. And it's low bandwidth and it's easy. It's not even like the obvious use of cloud storage, just getting it up and off and into archive, but doing a kind of a reoccurring backup with the smaller data is a really effective way to do it, because not only, if the worst case happens, hopefully you've got an offsite backup of the footage, and you can get an offsite backup of the footage like tomorrow if you've got local hard drives that you send home with somebody. Right. A little harder with getting an offsite backup with footage with the cloud in one day, unless you've got awesome, bandwidth, which a lot of us do now, which is cool. But yeah, no, there's a lot of different ways to access it. And I think what really drives it for most of the clients that I talk to is, the speed of access that they need and that they have for kind of the daily backup stuff. And then the just the overall size and the possibility of going back to the footage. Is it something that's going to be frequently used? Is it something that's going to be, basically we're going to check this box and the way it goes into the cloud and we're never going to see it again, hopefully.
And Brian, you brought up this workflow that I think you're referring to a while back, and I thought it was really cool what some of our guys are doing. And Skip, you might have to close your ears on this one, but somebody coming back and then using a format that we all love to hate, LTO, to back up those absolute camera raw files, because that stuff can be huge. You're shooting, 6K red raw files. That stuff adds up really quick. And then using, something like LTO, or usually LTO, to back up those raw files. But then, Brian, I think what you're talking about is having, the project files, all associated media except for the raw files, be what's doing a recurring backup to cloud storage, so that, kind of in most cases, even if that, that server goes up in flames, you can still go back and recover everything.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I want to be, to be fair, we're talking about several different things here. So what we're just describing right there is like a data integrity type backup, right?
Yeah.
And one of the bigger uses of cloud storage, obviously, and what Skip was pointing at is the archival side, where you're actually getting it out of your system and into a more secure, kind of the cloud system. So yeah, like there's a lot of different ways to utilize it, and the fact that it's there and that we can access it, there's a lot of ways to play.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. While you were going through what you're talking about, it seemed like you touched on a lot of the benefits that video professionals can get from using cloud storage. Do one of you mind like kind of taking that and putting in like a bite-sized chunk? Because there was a lot of good stuff there. Brian, you had a lot of these, so you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, like really the big benefit is it's another very quick, very accessible backup or archive point that if you're connected to the internet, literally who isn't outside of like a handful of I love this term now, this air-gapped editing stations, unless you're on an air-gapped editing station, how many of us aren't really connected? You can do a lot with that, and it's a great level of security, and you don't have to deal with LTO, you don't have to deal with external drives, and you can access it from anywhere, assuming that you've got the information at hand. It takes in a weird way, it takes the physicality out of the backup, because now it's effectively virtual. You can pull it down just about wherever you're at, which is not something that our world is used to when it comes to mass data handling. It's kind of like, I've got the tape or I've got the hard drive. Should I, UPS or FedEx? Like, what do you prefer?
And by the way, so what I'd add is that cloud can fit lots of different parts of a traditional workflow. So you could, for example, let's say you just did a bunch of shots and everyone's swapping hard drives. Well, that's a great point to, if you can, start ingesting that raw stuff to the cloud. Now it's maybe now sitting back in your asset manager, and it's already starting to make proxies for you. So that's a nice entry point for cloud. But primarily, I think most people are using it for active archive. And as as Brian was mentioning, it's if you can slipstream it into your regular workflow, it's making another copy. Maybe it's even an extra copy on top of LTO that you already have. Well, now you have that peace of mind of having an extra copy, and as Nate said, if everything goes down, you have that entire content archive available from outside your home studio environment. But what's really exciting to me, and I think you guys will get into, is that ProMAX especially has been exploring how to really tightly integrate cloud and physical hardware, even for remote collaboration, and that's really, really interesting. That's some nice cutting edge work.
Awesome.
Well, that's what we all have to do, because ultimately, whether or not we all kind of want the technology to be further than it is. But when you have to edit high resolution media, like you're going to have to make some kind of sacrifice, some kind of give.
Right.
And we've put a lot of our efforts into how do we make that feel transparent, because there's got to be some kind of local element to it, unless you go with the complete cloud, like the workstation, server, storage, everything's in the cloud. And then of course that has its own big asterisks to it.
It really does. And I mean, for all of this, I mean, and you guys know this better than anyone, creators want to create. They really don't want to be wrestling with, it's like, wait, what's this little tiny cube? You're telling me that's my workstation and the server's actually, somewhere else. They really want to create it. It's still kind of a physical, high touch sort of process. And, when you're cutting rushes or you're cutting, a lot of footage and playing, everything's got to be fast and responsive, but you also want that knowing that it's protected in case, a hard drive dies, because it does happen.
Yep.
That's awesome. So you already alluded to it a little bit, Skip. Let's talk about Backblaze's solution to cloud storage, specifically like your Fireball. We've done some experimenting with that in our office. You want to tell us about that?
You bet. So Fireball is sort of born of the realization that, you've heard this joke 100 times, like, what's the bandwidth of a FedEx truck? Because if you're having a hard time beaming a file around, how common has it been to just, let me just fill a hard drive and overnight it to the customer, and now they can do the previews or they can look at it. But what we've done and what you've integrated with is our Fireball, call it a rapid ingest solution, where Backblaze ships you a 70 terabyte NAS device, you plug it into your network, and then the volume is actually encrypted with credentials out of your account. So only you can open it and mount it. So you mount it, it appears on your network, and exactly as you want your buckets and files and content to show up in your Backblaze account. You copy content over, ship it back to Backblaze, and it gets placed right into your Backblaze account. So it's a really, really fast way. So what's the bandwidth of 70 terabytes on a FedEx truck? It's a lot of content really fast. And the point is, it really jumpstarts getting content quickly out of your environment, protected in highly protected cloud.
Awesome. Thanks, Skip. Nathaniel, do you want to talk a little bit about our integration with Backblaze and how those two work together? You're muted.
Who knew? Who knew? It happens. It's like our new world of Zoom rules. Always be on mute, right? Unless spoken to. I was in a Zoom earlier that like somebody was saying jokes, and he's like, "I'm used to hearing laughter," and and he's like, "This is awkward," and I'm like, "Now you know how it is to be me." But that was a bad joke. Sorry. No, so, the approach that we've taken is, it's real simple. Local, high performance shared storage, have a SQL database that's indexing everything on that local storage. And then we push and pull files to the cloud storage we keep that index of those files locally. So you can literally, search kind of like you do in Finder, kind of like you do in Spotlight. You can just search for a file, find that file. And with our database, with our search, our whole goal is like, let's not make it matter whether it's on your local storage, whether it's in your Backblaze pool, whether it's on a hard drive sitting on the shelf. So it's just like, here's the file, here's the location. And then if it's in cloud storage, if it's in Backblaze, right click, restore that file, bring it back locally. It really makes a very, a lot of people don't understand how ethereal kind of object storage can be. It's not a file system where it's like, I'm going to click through my folders.
Right.
And we try to put a layer to kind of, make that feel like it's just, let's click through some folders. And you literally can just click through some folders if you want, that's how I work. That's, I've been going through folder tree structures for the last 30 years. Like, it's just what my brain is used to.
Amen. And what you've done is a really smart way of adding this overlay and enhancing that solution. So now it intrinsically feels like what everybody's used to: files and folders with human readable names and that sort
exactly.
of thing. It's really clever.
Well, and with having one of the things I didn't touch on that we do is we create those low-res proxies on the local storage, and we just keep those low-res proxies. So one of the problems with, whether it's cloud or LTO or a drive that's like 12 drive deeps in a closet that you forgot about, searching, retrieving those files can take a significant amount of time. So it's very important to be able to preview those files, to be able to see them and play them back before you go through the trouble of restoring that data.
Yeah, and Nathaniel, you hit on something that I was definitely going to mention on, and that is, I don't think enough people truly understand the difference between an object store and a file system, because it is absolutely not what they expect it to be if you're used to the good old NTFS or HFS plus kind of stuff. And to have a front end that kind of trivializes that was really like, I mean, that's what got us into conversations with you guys, Skip, in the first place. Was, one of the things I remember you guys came and said was, we got creative users who want to use this thing and like, they need something else here. So that was kind of our goal around that. And I think we did a relatively good job at it.
Awesome.
Absolutely. And you get both benefits. The whole notion of object storage is that it's highly scalable, and it actually protects against the kinds of things that can happen to individual disk drives like bit rot. It's like so if that ever happens, say in something stored as an object, it'll immediately be flagged and either repaired or retrieved from elsewhere in the storage. So it has all these techniques to make sure that what you write to object storage is always retrievable 100 years from now, exactly as you wrote it. And that right there is a really outstanding advantage of an active archive. And now when you pair it with something that makes it as easy to discover as browsing through projects and files and folders, and even automatically making those proxies for you before you ship it to Backblaze and the raws get moved in, that's a killer solution.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And before we wrap up this episode, Skip, do you want to talk a little bit more about something we have coming up at the end of the month?
Absolutely. We are together. So this whole notion of how to make cloud and shared storage work together, whether everyone's back in the production studio or now your top editors are having to be in their remote offices, we've got a solution that you're really going to want to take a look at that the ProMAX team has been putting together. And on April 30th at 10 a.m. Pacific, we're going to have a webinar, and we will show you this solution and take your questions about how you can implement it too. So the ProMAX team have been working really hard for a lot of their top customers deploying this solution, and we can't wait for you to see it.
Awesome. Thanks, Skip. Just like you heard, April 30th, 10 a.m. Pacific. Since NAB is canceled, we're going to bring NAB to you. So if you haven't already, hit that red subscribe button below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Stay healthy, everyone.
Indeed.